What's up, everybody? Welcome back. Got some React content fresh off the presses. Piers Morgan back at it. Israel Palestine. You know that man can't get enough. He see Israel Palestine people fighting against each other. He just I gotta have it. I need it. He's a fiend for it. He's a fiend for it. I'm a fiend for it too. So I love the debate. I love the back and forth. It's so nuanced. It gives me a break. But anyway, we got some uh Israel Palestine debate I want to react to. These two ladies are always going back and forth. Honestly, it's crazy, fam. But let's get into it. Let's go.
Welcome back to piersmorgan Uncensored. I'm joined by my pack now, the founder of Within Our Lifetime, Nadine Kiswani, and the broadcaster and journalist Emily Austin. Okay, Emily, what did you make of that exchange I just had with Loki?
I just dislike how you ask a clear-cut question and the question never seems to be addressed on any of your interviews, quite frankly. It seems like they use the airtime as an opportunity to deny the question and just spread their own narrative, and it's pointless. The debate is pointless. It's a one-sided conversation and there's no actual conversation. It's, here's my question. Oh, but what about this pin?
Right. I mean,
I do give her I give her I give her some flowers here because if we're not about to change state policy, we're not about to change Netanyahu's mind, we're not about to change Hamas's mind, unless the whole world came in agreement, and even then, they probably still wouldn't change their mind. Um, so this is all conjecture. This is all for the interest of discussion. But where I found personally is when you have these discussions, you don't get any acquiescence from either side. I'm not going to say just the Palestinian side, even though it's heavily on that side. It's mostly on both. It's mostly on both sides where no one will give any acquiescence. We don't argue out of good faith here. It's always just I need to appear as though I'm winning to get my point across and damn the other side. But the whole point is to have a conversation, have a back and forth to actually discuss it because it's such a nuanced situation, and we're not really going to change it. We want to have those debates so we can go, okay, I learned something, you learned something. Maybe going forward we can move accordingly with the new information I have, the new information you have. Let's come to a middle ground.
my problem with it was I've interviewed some pro-Palestinian voices in the last 2 weeks who were emphatic immediately. Let me make it clear. What happened on October the 7th was a disgusting terrorist attack, an abomination. And then they go on to talk about the plight of the Palestinian people and maybe the historical conflict and so on. And I have great respect for people that do that. I've got to say, I really struggle with anyone who just cannot have the humanity to start by saying what happened on October the 7th was appalling, an outrage. Do you feel it was?
I think Palestinians are tired of that being the starting point constantly, when right now there are 6,000 Palestinians who have been killed in Gaza, over 2,500 of them children, 33 mosques leveled, hospitals leveled. So we're tired of that being the main.
But in the entrance of conversation, it has to be the starting point, right? I think I mentioned this before. If you're coming from a place where, let's say, for instance, I'm not saying she does, but let's say, for instance, you believe what Hamas did on October 7th is justified. Let's actually, Pierce loves saying, um, do you condemn Hamas? If you do not condemn Hamas, then we cannot have a conducive, productive conversation. We can't. It's impossible because you're coming from a position where Hamas is essentially the good guys. They're the freedom fighters, and they did what they did in response to what Israel has done. I cannot I can't have a conducive conversation with you if all I'm gonna be doing is convincing you that Hamas is terrorists or are terrorists and Hamas are not freedom fighters and what they did is not okay. It leads to the same, like, Ouroboros wrapping around doing the same thing over and over and over and over. It's the fulfilling prophecy of you don't condemn Hamas, I do. That's what we're talking about. I don't want to talk about whether you condemn Hamas or whether I condemn Israel. What I want to talk about is solutions to this problem. That's more interesting to me.
Goal of the conversation.
It's not the main goal.
Part of it.
It's the starting point of this war. Yeah, but hang on. It's the starting point of this war. It's not the main goal of what I want the conversation to be.
The starting point was when 750,000 Palestinians were ethnically cleansed, were expelled from their homelands during the Nakba, which my grandparents fled Palestine because of the Nakba, because of the massacres and the rapes that they heard. So to me, that's the starting point. That's my experience.
Let's go with that for a minute. Let's start with the Nakba, because the only Nakba is the part that people forget to address. 1948, after the partition plan, the Jewish state called in the Arabs to live prosperously and peacefully in the land. But what happened the very next day, not even 24 hours later, is the alleged Nakba, where the Arab leagues declared war on the Jewish state, that we just agreed to have our two-state solution. And what did they tell their people? Leave the state. Let us get the land back.
Okay, she's right, but she's also framing things in a very, like, not true. Like, it's not even really untrue, but it's just she's framing it weirdly to make herself in Israel in this situation seem completely justified. She said that that the Nakba essentially happened after we had agreed to a two-state solution, which is not the case. The Nakba happened after um, the the Israel declared its independence, and the other Arab states said, "Nah, fam," and went to war with them. And then, I mean, obviously, you can argue that um, the Arab citizens living in Israel decided to leave because of the war, because of what they heard Israeli soldiers were doing, or because what they were actually doing. All of which you can say is true. Um, but to frame it as though Israel was peacefully um, uh, given or peacefully gave Palestinians a two-state solution, and then um, it was denied and war became and the Nakba happened is not true.
Let's ethnically cleanse the Jewish people, and once we defeat them in this war, you will come back to the land. So the only Nakba was a catastrophe that you guys, the Arab leagues, waged a war that you could not win, and that is why, I'm sorry, your grandparents had to leave their homes.
That's completely ahistorical. I don't represent the Arab League. I'm Palestinian, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Palestinians.
But why do you find it hard to just start, given this war, this latest war that's erupted, began with a terror attack on October the 7th, why is it hard to not just say, that was terrible?
I don't see you asking Regev if he condemned the slaughter of innocent civilians.
You can't do it, can you?
No, she can't, because she's the same woman who said every Zionist before they die should hear pop, pop before they die. So she...
Oh, no, she didn't. Oh, no, she didn't. She brought it hood, too. Pop, pop, last sound you hear. Bang, bang. Nah, but that's crazy. You can't. Oh, no. She had receipts, too. Oh, no. That's crazy.
probably agrees with the massacre, so why would she condemn them?
I think the media is part of manufacturing consent.
We're talking about you.
I'm speaking here, and I'm not interested in speaking to genocide deniers. The media is manufacturing consent for genocide against the Palestinian people. Just
what are we doing here, bro? I hate when we get to the point. I mean, clearly she is triggered, but I hate when we get to the point where people are like, "Well, I'm not talking to you." What, bro? Pierce brought y'all on to debate, not to have a conversation with him. Because otherwise it'd be one-on-one. It's supposed to be a three-way. She brings the Israeli point of view. You bring the Palestinian point of view, and then he's like the mediator. If you're not going to talk to her, what are we doing here?
like they did with the lie of the weapons of mass destruction that was used to justify the murder of over 1 million Iraqis. And there's been many lies that have been repeated all over the news, including on your show, where CNN had to rescind, and even you said in subsequent interviews about the 40 beheaded babies. I haven't seen a single shred of evidence. I have not seen a single shred of evidence about these accusations coming out.
I was actually deliberately misquoted.
Oh, come on.
This game, you're not.
You raised an interesting point there about this issue of the beheaded babies from the October 7th terrorist attack. I was accused by Bassem Youssef of saying on air that 40 babies had been beheaded. I never said that. I said there were reports that 40 babies had been killed and that some had been beheaded. That appears to have been borne out by other reporting, but I haven't seen the full details of every single casualty, so I don't know for sure. I certainly never said 40 babies were beheaded, but that clip has gone around the world and I've been bombarded with abuse based on an absolute lie.
I don't see a big difference between saying 40 babies were beheaded versus maybe, 40 babies were killed,
you don't think there's between 40
beheaded.
and some?
Because at the same, that's the lie that's being used to kill 6,000 Palestinians in Gaza right now.
Okay, well, let me ask you a minute.
That's not the only justification. If you think if it came out today that there weren't 40 babies killed, that Israel would just go, you know what, stop the bombs, we're done. It was false. It was false information. Sorry, y'all. We take it back. Like if you think that everything just stops because of that, you out of your mind. It's funny though that she's pushing Piers on his misinformation, but then um will say that her talking about 1948 in the partition plan, that's ahistorical.
This question. I've asked Nadine, can she say she was horrified by what happened on October?
She wasn't.
And she will not say that, which I think is very disappointing. Would you, in return, when you look at what's been happening in Gaza in the last 2 weeks, do you find that appalling, that the loss of young lives, of babies, of children, of women, innocent people who had nothing to do with the terror attacks?
Absolutely, 100%. Any death of innocent civilians should be condemned privately and publicly, and I cannot believe I have to say that. So yes, every children that is being collateral damage, every woman that's becoming collateral damage, my heart aches for them.
Why can't you do that?
I think we all agree that the loss of innocent life is sad, but I believe that the loss of innocent life wouldn't be an issue.
It's okay
if
when
Israel
it's the
didn't
Jews.
ethnically cleanse Palestine to begin with in 1948.
Well, they didn't, and that's
that is the source of this. To me, I go to the source of the issue.
But
what happened on October 7th isn't the beginning of what Palestinians
but had you asked me,
have been
okay, but Nadine, ask me.
That's not the starting point.
Why don't you ask me what do I think of that? You have a lot of preconceived views of what you think I think. I agree with you. I think the displacement of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians in 1948 is the root cause of all of this.
Well, you can thank the Arab Leagues for declaring war on the two-state solution.
There are
They had it right in
myriad
front of
people
them.
at fault in the next 70 years.
We were ethnically cleansed from our land. It's not like Jewish people were ethnically cleansed from the land of Palestine. They colonized it from other people.
But here's
I'm actually discussing with him. I refuse to speak to genocide denier.
Well,
I refuse to speak to genocide
She's
denier.
not a genocide denier. She's not.
Do you know the definition of a genocide?
No, I do know the definition of a genocide. Gaza currently is a concentration camp
No, it is
because
not.
the Palestinians.
You think
are
Hamas
being,
wages genocide?
I believe that. Look at the numbers. Look at the Palestinians who have been killed.
Hamas's stated
We're not here to talk
purpose
about any
is
specific
to
political
eradicate
entities.
the Jewish people. It's their stated purpose.
The first thing that we should be fighting
that's
for
literally
is for
genocide.
Palestinians to be returned
Yeah, but
home
Nadine,
to their homeland.
that is
And we
literally
can talk about the specifics of
Hamas's
political
stated
entities.
purpose is literally the definition of genocide.
This is why we can't have a productive conversation. If you're coming from a place of Palestinians should have the right to go back to their ancestral home, what are we talking about here? Because if you honestly think that there's even a shred of a chance that the Israeli government will make a deal with Hamas, PA, to bring Palestinians in and just like come together and have people go back to their ancestral homes. If you think that's going to happen, you are out of your mind. I don't know one single instance in history where after a war that in if you want to argue that Israel is an occupying force, because if you think that Palestinians lost their land due to the war and everything like that, then they would be an occupying force. The war never really ended. Um, then it, I've never seen a situation where an occupying force decided, okay, we're gonna give you our land and have you own it. Like yes, America gave Native Americans reservations, but they didn't go, okay, um, if you've shown that your great 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 grandmother lived in this area in New York, so therefore you can have that house. If you like, that's not happening. We have to come from a place of like like conversation, at least that's conducive to the conversation, because otherwise, what are we talking about? It's just a waste of time.
Out people
The
based on their
hostages who were
ethnicity.
released had otherwise to say.
Oh, the
as
2
we've
out
seen
of
in
250.
the
Let's
news.
applaud Hamas. You can't. Okay.
The hostages that Israel didn't even want to take to begin with. They didn't even want to take them back.
But they did take them. The Palestinians need to divorce
as they bomb
Hamas.
Gaza, risking their own hostages.
I'm going to keep speaking.
They don't care about killing
Palestine needs to be liberated from Hamas, because when your governing body is a terrorist organization, that is the root of the problem, not the alleged ethnic cleansing.
The ethnic cleansing of Palestine happened.
I wouldn't even say it's the root of the problem. You can argue that if you want, but it's definitely a huge starting point. If you were to get rid of Hamas and put in a, a government like the PA, or I don't even know, it would have to be something completely different. Hamas is not conducive to peace. They literally are a terrorist organization. Like, there's been rocket strikes every single month since 2005, when Gaza became when all the settlements were pulled back from Gaza. There's just been constant attack. Like, it's nonstop. And if we want this to end, then you can't have the group that's actually perpetrating these attacks in power in this nation. I know they were democratically elected, but they're not helping. They're actively hurting the Palestinians. And that's what people don't get when they come on these shows and they debate people. They think that um because they view Hamas as freedom fighters because of what they did, that they're, I guess, helpful. But they're not. You've seen the results of what happened with them. The bombings, the killings. It's not going to get better with Hamas in power.
Decades before Hamas was even created.
Let me ask you a
What
question.
exactly
Let me ask you a
happened?
question. Do you think that Hamas should stay in power in Gaza?
I'm not here to talk about
It's a
political
question.
organizations. No, I don't care about these questions because my people are being ethnically cleansed. Because
My
I see
people are
the
being
faces
murdered
of
for being Jews.
2,500 Palestinian children
Yes.
on social media every day, charred, mutilated, having chemical weapons against them. So this is going to be my priority on this show, just like any Palestinian around the world is speaking up for our
You
cause.
will have also, you will
Hamas,
also.
stop using babies as human shields. Stop
It's the
making
most
your
densely
rocket
populated
launchers
region in the world.
Yeah, but you will
nurseries
also
and
know,
civilian homes.
Nadine,
2.3
Gaza is not the most densely populated place in the world. This narrative needs to stop. I think it's like somewhere in the Philippines or something like that. It's not Gaza. It's definitely densely populated. It's not the most densely populated in the world. Please stop this. It's not true.
3 million
Nadine,
Palestinians
let me
live there.
respond.
Half of them are homeless.
Let me respond to you.
This is a
Let me
ridiculous
respond to you.
argument.
My question is whether you think it is good for the Palestinian people that Hamas stay in charge, given the scale of the terror attacks they carried out, given the inevitable response that's come from Israel, with the inevitable loss of Palestinian lives, given the displacement now of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians out of the north of Gaza into the south, and who knows what's going to happen. The devastation to Gaza and to Gazan people has been unbelievable, and yet entirely predictable once Hamas decided to carry out the terror attack on the scale they did. I simply ask you, do you think that's a good thing for
Is it
Palestine?
not predictable that there will continue to be resistance to oppression as long as apartheid, occupation, ethnic cleansing, genocide continues to exist? Whether Hamas exists or not is an irrelevant question, because as long as oppression against the Palestinian people exists, we will continue
how can you
to
end
resist
that
it.
oppression as you see it, and many would agree with you?
Why don't we address the oppression first? She called Israel an apartheid state, so I'd like to just define what apartheid is. It is segregation, like what South Africa is facing, but the alleged apartheid is because Israel set up security measures after the numerous bus bombings in 2000 and set up checkpoints, which they got very insulted by. But it's the same way that airports now require security after 9/11, reasonably so. So it is taking security precautions. Secondly, we have 3 Arabs, and if I'm not mistaken, Muslims currently sitting in the Knesset. Does that sound like apartheid
Let
to
me
you?
quote the
They have
Israeli
full
defense
Israeli
minister and
Arab
how they view
rights.
Palestinians. He said that we are fighting against human animals, that our soldiers will not be accountable for anything. There will be no fuel, no food, no water, and Gaza will cease to exist. This is what Yoav Gallant, the Israeli defense minister, has said. This is how they refer to
Yeah, I think one of the big problems,
This is beyond
I think one of the
that's definitely horrible. But I mean, I'm sure this was said directly after October 7th, when emotions were running high, and in their eyes, the people wanted blood, and they wanted blood, just rightfully
big
so.
problems leading up to this has been.
That's not apartheid. That's
Well,
beyond
let me just say what I
apartheid.
think.
That's the
I think-
language of
let me
ethnic
say-
cleansing and genocide,
Let me
beyond
just-
apartheid.
Let me make the point I want to make, which is I think one of the problems leading up to this is that Benjamin Netanyahu, for political expediency to remain in power, has packed his cabinet with a bunch of right-wing headbangers whose rhetoric actually was incredibly incendiary and incredibly unhelpful. So I do think that. Actually.
And you know what? Even if you're right, unfortunately, the narrative that it's about the land, I'm sorry, the Hebron massacres in 1927, 1929, that was not about Israel. It is about the murder of Jews all over the world. National Jihad Day that I had to worry about being in Manhattan.
Hebron massacre, oof, big one. That was where a bunch of Arabs who thought that um, the Jews in the area were coming to take over the land, just literally just killed them all. I think it was a couple hundred, maybe 100, something like that, and just killed them all. Literally just for the thought that they would be coming to integrate or take over the land.
And last Friday was not about
You mean
Israel.
the day where we
It
had
is
a
about
protest
the
where
Hamas
thousands of New Yorkers came
charter.
out? That's not
The
a national
Hamas
day of
charter
jihad.
calls for
You're
the
talking about a
genocide.
national day
Let
of
me
jihad.
ask you both-
She's
all right,
afraid for
listen.
her life. Who was killed in America? Who was killed? A 6-year-old Palestinian boy
And a
was
rabbi
killed in
last
Chicago.
week. You wanna
was
compare
stabbed
numbers?
26
That was appalling.
times.
It was appalling.
26
appalling.
times.
Yeah, but Nadine,
And
I
you're
can-
talking about being
Rabbi.
afraid for your life.
can
I'm
say-
constantly afraid for my life
I
as a
can say,
Palestinian
I
living in
can
a
say
Zionist
to those
city and
examples you just
Zionist-controlled
gave,
media.
they are appalling, appalling. But I also find it very dispiriting that you can't just take a moment to say what happened to the people in Israel on October the 7th was also appalling.
But it came out of her mouth. She wants the Zionists dead, so how is she supposed to condemn it?
It would not have happened had Israel not initiated this, and you know this from the beginning.
What? Come on, bro. Stop. It's such an easy dunk. You could tell because every time they bring it up and old girl doubles down on it, she's like she doesn't know what to say. It's like her brain just it's like I want to say, yeah, I'm glad they're gone. But I can't. So I'm just like lost. Like it's such an easy dunk. Yes, Hamas, I condemn what they did on October 7th. Even if in the back of your mind you're like, yeah, they're freedom fighters, so they kind of did what they had to do. Loss of life equal condemnation. Like it's just you just have to because it's wrong. These people didn't do anything to you. They didn't do anything to Palestinians. They didn't do anything to Hamas. There's no reason why they would have had to die. Even if a random IDF soldier, I mean, you can argue there's a chance that person probably did something wrong to a Palestinian. Does he deserve to die because of something he might have done? Just like the same thing in reverse can be said about Israel and Palestinian civilians. Do they deserve to die because of what Hamas did? Like it's such an easy dunk.
I think we always need
Israel
to go back
did
to
nothing
Yes,
that
they did.
warranted what happened on October the 7th. Nothing.
Israel?
Nothing. The scale of that terror attack is like saying that America brought 9/11 on itself. I remember people saying that in the streets afterwards.
I think she
and
wants
that was
to go back
equally
in time and
that
yell
was
at the United
equally
Nations for
equally
dividing the
repellent to me. A terror attack is a terror attack is a terror attack. What Hamas did that day was unconscionable.
We have
anyone
no state,
with an
no
ounce of
government,
humanity
no army.
has to say that.
Anything that Palestinians do to defend themselves
did you-
will always be categorized as a terrorist attack because this is the
wanna ask her a
position that the
question.
world has put us in.
Right,
I'm
final
not
point to
responding to your
Emma.
questions.
I have a question. When was the last time
Palestine?
Palestine Palestine had full sovereignty over the land? Give me a date or even a year that Palestine had their own
I'm
government.
not going to engage with genocide deniers. If you want to make a point, you can say that.
She wants to be a child. How are you an attorney? God. Can you ask her, when did Palestine have full sovereignty over the land?
When
I'm
did
not here to
Palestine
talk
have full
about when did
sovereignty?
full sovereignty, and I
because
see
the
that you're
answer is
taking
they
your
never
talking points
did.
from her.
Well,
Can
you don't want
ask?
to talk to me.
It's a question.
He has to do.
It is a question. Okay, so I'm gonna give the answer. When did Palestine have authority over the land? The answer is 2005. If you're talking about historically, they kind of never did, to be honest. I mean, the Ottomans controlled the land. The Brits kicked the Ottomans' ass. Um, they had a mandate over the land. Um, then they were going to partition it uh to Jews. So, and then the Arab League went to war with Israel after they declared independence. They lost, and Gaza was in control, was occupied and controlled by Egypt, and the West Bank was occupied and controlled by Jordan, Transjordan. So, uh, there wasn't. I mean, someone let me know in the comments if I'm wrong, but I don't think I am.
You don't have to answer
Do you
it.
want to answer me and stop being a child? If you have a Jew in court, are you not going to represent them as an attorney?
This has nothing to do with Jewish people.
No, it does.
We actually have Jewish people protesting on the streets of New York City.
Yeah, but hang on.
In defense of Palestine.
Okay, let's not all shout over each other, but it has everything to do with Jewish people when Hamas's stated intent is to wipe Jewish people off the face.
I think it's also fair to say, because I don't think Hamas. I mean, I think when they officially came about, they wanted to get rid of Jewish people. I don't think that's what their goal is today. I think it's literally just to return Palestine um to the Arabs, Jerusalem to the Arabs. Um, not just wiping out Jews. Like if every Jewish person was to like leave Israel and go somewhere else, I don't think they would. Hamas would be actively moving with with the explicit goal of wiping out every Jewish person on the planet. I don't think that's true.
I'm not the spokesperson of Hamas.
No, but
I don't
you
know
should be
why
able to
from the
say that's
beginning of
wrong.
this conversation, that's all you're talking
Because
about.
you're defending
No,
them.
I'm here to flip the narrative and make sure
You
that
know
people
why
know
we're all
that
sitting
this
here?
government is funding Israel to the tune of $10 million a day, $3 billion a year, and they're asking for an additional $14 billion in aid.
Okay.
Yeah, but doesn't like 10 million go to Gaza from the United States? A lot of money, a couple million too. I think it might be like 50 million or something. It's a lot of money.
bombs that are being manufactured by U.S. companies are what's being dropped on Gaza. The world is watching a genocide happening and is not doing anything
Biden gave
about it.
$100 million
So the
to
most
Gaza
important
and
thing for
terrorists.
It was 100 million. I was gonna say 100 million, but that seemed like it's too much. But yes, it's $100 million to Gaza, bro. That's crazy. And that's just an aid. Hold that. That's yours. Don't worry about it. And you know where that money goes? That money goes to Hamas. It goes to Hamas. It really does.
me
Okay,
to do
we have
right
to-
now is to stop this genocide.
Okay.
Address
And
your
questions
question.
about Hamas are not going to do that.
Okay.
It's condemning
It's the
genocide of
government
the
of
Palestinian
Palestine.
people and condemning the UK
Nadine?
and US governments
Nadine?
that we live under, that I pay taxes to,
Nadine?
that are killing Palestinian people every day. And the UN
Nadine?
already said that Gaza would be unlivable by 2020.
Mm-hmm.
The UN had already said that most of the hospitals in Gaza, at least 2/3 of the healthcare facilities, are not being able
saw
to
that
provide.
today, yeah.
Are not able to.
I think it's wrong.
function. So it's
I think
not
it's
just
wrong.
But why do you blame Israel for that? Is the like why do you blame Israel for the fact that the actual like infrastructure of Gaza is falling apart? That's Hamas. They're the government. They're the ones supposed to be doing this with the $100 million of aid they get. There should be new schools, new piping. Hell, there should be water treatment plants. There should be electrical plants. You should be self-sufficient at this point with all the money y'all get. You can argue, okay, the West Bank, you got settlements, you got a tighter grip from the Israeli government, but Gaza should be independent. I don't see any way, like, I don't see how it's not. Like, I really don't. Like, Israelis don't walk into Gaza and go, let me check the power plants. Yes, it's connected. But if you wanted to have technicians come in and cut the lines and connect it to a whole nother power plant, I'm sure you could. With $100 million, I'm sure you could. To be self-sufficient, you can. Yes, there's also a blockade over Gaza. Yes. But with all that money, I'm sure, and with aid, I'm sure aid coming in from Egypt, from like you can do it. You can do it. There's no excuse. There's no excuse.
The airstrikes and the missiles that are going to kill people. The siege and blockade has been killing people, and it will continue to kill people.
You should be able to say that that is all wrong, which I believe it is wrong. And you should also be able to say that what happened on October the 7th was wrong. A human being who cares equally about the lives of all human beings would be able to say that
I do care about the lives of all human beings equally, and that's why exactly I believe that in order to preserve human life, you must end the siege on Gaza, you must end the blockade, you must end the settler colonization of Palestine.
Listen, it's
Free Palestine from Hamas.
It's a passionate debate, and I understand why emotions run high. I appreciate you both coming in. Thank you very much indeed. Come back. Let's continue the debate. You only get to peace in these things, I can promise you, by thrashing these things out. People that hate each other have to come together and they have to try and find places of compromise. Otherwise, you never get to peace. 70 years this has been going on.
Piers is such a debate pervert. Come back. Of course you want him to come back. Like, you want this to continue. This back and forth is content, brother. Why do you think I'm reacting to it? Let's see what the people saying. It's really hard to win an argument against an intelligent, well-educated person, but it's impossible to win an argument against a complete idiot. Who's the idiot here? You cannot argue with someone that has so much hate in their hearts. Who's hateful? It is so sad to watch a person deny that every person has a right to live. Oh, you must be talking about Nadine. Never argue with stupid person who would drag you down to the level and beat you with experience. Mark Twain. Who's the idiot? Never argue with the idiot. Who's the idiot here? The Israel-Hamas conflict is deeply rooted in historical, political, and religious factors, making it entirely complex. Critics argue that media outlets oversimplify the situation, neglecting crucial nuances and historical context, oversimplifying contributes to a narrative that places more blame on Israel, overlooking the intricacies. That's true. I would. That's true. That's true. I mean, I wouldn't even say that they. If you're doing oversimplification, that's people oversimplify to make it seem like Israel is bad, not to seem like Israel is good. No, that's I would say on both sides. You can oversimplify it to make it seem like Israel took Palestine's land, therefore Palestine should have it back, and fighting for it is just. You can also oversimplify it and say Israel was attacked, therefore they need to fight back, and Hamas, unfortunately, I mean the Palestinians are just um, unfortunate sacrifices, unfortunately. But um, man, I don't even know what this person is saying. Agreed. Who's well educated? Right. Yeah, they're both well educated. I think one person just was coming from more of a place of bad faith. Unfortunately, I wish it's not gonna be productive if you're not trying to, have a conversation. But that was the video. Let me know in the comments what you think about this whole situation. Um, Let me know what your path forward might be. Um, if you were in power. And yeah, peace in the Middle East. All right, see you guys next time. Love you.